So you've heard about this guy called Matt Walsh. Apparently some audio leaked. The Serfs, also known as Lance, posting a link. What does the link say? Tell me.
Of course they're going to. That's what makes them Mexican. Of course they will. That is not.
I'm saying if they stop identifying themselves as just Mexicans and they start, appreciating the country that they currently reside.
What is the country? I mean,
America.
Well, then, what does that mean? If you take away the Anglo-Saxon culture, which is what started this damn country.
Yeah, but you can
Sorry,
adopt.
not damn country.
You can adopt.
Hold on. First of all, American culture is not Anglo-Saxon. The most influential cultural groups in America, certainly as things developed, would probably be Polish and Germans, not Anglo-Saxon, Irish and Italians, not Anglo-Saxon, and black people, massively black people, not Anglo-Saxon. This is not an Anglo-Saxon. Like a tiny portion of this country is purely Anglo-Saxon. Like, that's ridiculous. By Anglo-Saxon, he means white. This is something that white nationalists and white supremacists will often do, is they'll conflate Anglo-Saxon, the very small ethnic group, with white people broadly. It's like it's almost only used as a dog whistle. Like like seriously. Here, hold on, really quickly, just so we know, okay? The group Anglo-Saxons refer to are a previous group that inhabited England in the early Middle Ages. Like, we're talking about the post-Roman occupation, and this is like this isn't a thing anymore. This is not, like, even if you want to be really charitable and attribute like Anglo-Saxon cultural and ethnic legacy to like modern English people, which you shouldn't, because that's not accurate, not even a little bit, but that doesn't even come close to describing American culture today. The Anglo-Saxon period ended 1 millennia ago. Then the Normans came.
Philosophies is my point. So I'm confused by race or culture. Like, what are you promoting?
Both. You can't separate them. They're the same. What I'm saying is not like I'm making this up. This has just been the case. Go back through history. This is just
what Matt Walsh is saying right now. This is like very standard ethno-nationalist rhetoric right here. He's saying that an ethnicity and a nationality are the same thing. They are intrinsically the same. If a person is genetically Mexican, then they are ideologically and culturally and nationally Mexican, and that can't be changed. That's what he's saying.
The way it works is that a country is more than just a border. It's more than just a supply. If all America was just like a plot of land we happen to be sitting on, then it would mean nothing to me, okay? But because it's also identified with a way of thinking, a way of life, a culture, a philosophy.
No, it's not. So national borders are a political and legal entity. They shift all the time and have in American history as well. They can describe a shared group of people with a shared set of ideas, but they often don't. Like, the idea that everybody within a nation agrees on all issues and all have the same ideological positions is ridiculous. Nobody actually believes that. So what Matt is saying right now, he doesn't believe what he's saying. I have talked to a lot of white nationalist guys. None of them actually believe that a nation describes a shared set of values because they're spending all their time arguing over those values with other people in that nation. Matt Walsh argues with other Americans, white Americans, about what America should be. He doesn't believe that it describes a shared set of ideas. What he means, what he's actually saying, is that America is fundamentally a white country, that regardless of idea or ancestry or nationality or whatever else, there is a fundamental spiritual association between America and whiteness, or as he says, Anglo-Saxonness, even though that's ridiculous, and that can't be changed. This is something that white nationalists usually believe, you know? The more honest ones will argue that there's nothing fundamental about it and it's just a power game, and those are the ones you can usually argue with. You'll have people who will say, like, no, all races are battling for supremacy, and we want America because we made it, and we're here, so we're going to fight to make America a white country. And then you'll ask, well, why can't it be other people's? And they'll say, like, well, because we have the power and that's what we want. They're being honest. I mean, they're lying about plenty of things in support of their argument, but the belief that it's all about power, that is the honesty there. It's about power to them. Matt is lying here when he talks about like the fundamental nature of ethnicity. It's all about power to him too. Yes, a core tenet of fascism is exactly this. Guys, You know the phrase? What's the historically fascist phrase that refers to the association between race and ethnicity and the land? There it is. Blood and soil. It is so classically fascist that it's one of the main things we associate with Nazi iconography and messaging.
Because that was all there, and it was an Anglo-Saxon thing. Then that's what I identify with. It's not the location and the geography that I identify with. Yeah, I like the rolling hills and I like the purple mountains majesty and all that too. But what I like most is the culture and philosophy that was distinctly.
Is this confirmed Matt Walsh or a convincing AI? Certainly sounds like him. Leaked audio of Matt Walsh arguing for superiority and extinction of the Anglo-Saxon race. Audio quality improved and uploaded by Lance. It's from his old radio show. Yeah, he did a lot of this, remember? This is probably the same basic place. Like, he did this radio show. This is where he talked about, like, the fuckability and breedability of little girls. I assume that a lot of that stuff was scrubbed from the internet, and this is just, like, turned up. It's been found, and the audio clearly sucks, but that's why it's leaked audio. That's why that's why it sounds like that.
Western Anglo-Saxon. And that's what it was. And so when
Again, he means white. Even the term, somebody earlier asked, does he mean white Anglo-Saxon Protestant? Well, a couple of things there. For one, no, he would not risk alienating Catholics right now, considering the Trad-Cath base is the most, like, obnoxiously loud group of Nazis in the United States. And B, even the term white Anglo-Saxon Protestant is a misnomer. When people say, he is Catholic? Oh, he is Catholic. Oh, my God, I completely forgot. You're right. So, yeah, no, he definitely does not mean WASP. But also, the term WASP is also a misnomer. When people say WASP, they mean white Protestant. Like, when people say WASP, nobody's like, oh, that's not a WASP. They're white and a Protestant, but, they're actually Irish in ancestry 4 generations back. The Anglo-Saxon thing isn't actually like isn't actually like a determining characteristic there, because it's not really a thing. Yeah, North or West European Protestant broadly. But let's be real. When we say WASP, don't we also mean rich and suburban? I've never heard anybody say WASP in reference to a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant who lives in, like, rural Appalachia or, like, in the inner city or whatever. It's just, like, suburban white Protestant, basically. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what Matt Walsh is talking about. He just means white.
These other groups come, and you say, well, as long as they don't bring but they have brought their culture with them. So you can say as long as they don't, but they have and they will continue to. So let's forget about that, because that's exactly what they're doing. And of course, why wouldn't they, when the original inhabitants, the original inhabitants, of course, were Native American, but forget about them for a second. Everyone else has. When the original inhabitants of
See, notice, so this is how you know that it's only about power and not about fundamental association. Because obviously, if Matt Walsh actually believed that different racial or ethnic groups have a fundamental tie to the land, he would not support the eradication of the Native Americans. That's a position he actually supports, by the way, and he said it explicitly multiple times. He doesn't do the normal conservative thing where he's like, oh, well, it's unfortunate that the natives died, but, we were bringing civilization, blah, blah. He will just flat out laugh at them being slaughtered, In that respect, he is being more honest than a lot of conservatives, because a lot of conservatives privately do just laugh at them being slaughtered because they're fascists, and their political position really does just boil down to supremacy of different ethnic groups over another, and because they won that one. Sorry, guys, white people did win the war for colonization of the Americas, or at least North America. They like it. They're fine with it.
At least the United States of America are dying off because we've decided we're too cool to have kids. Then why wouldn't they bring their culture? Because there's a cultural void.
White genocide? He's saying that white Americans are dying off because we're not having kids, and that leaves a cultural void that non-white groups are exploiting by moving into the country and having their own kids. This is very common. This is like 14 words. Very, very common white nationalist stuff.
What I'm saying is that when we die off, as we have been, we have left a cultural void. And that void will be filled with this other hodgepodge of cultures. And I'll tell you something else. When you have just a geographical location, when there's no agreement at all.
Next clip.
What's important to you, what your values are and all that, that country cannot exist for very long. And that's where civil wars come from. That's why we fought the Civil War to begin with, was because there was a culture difference between the North and the South.
Well, I suppose that's technically true. The cultural difference was, acceptance over slavery. I mean, I guess technically that describes pretty much every conflict, right? Like a cultural difference. I mean, if you want to be really general about it, that's one way to put it. You're very, very technically correct. Well, I mean, guys, you joke, but owning slaves literally was Southern culture. So I mean, technically that is true. Though obviously he's playing it down deliberately here. So yeah, this is very, like, I guess, standard great replacement shit.
We're going to be headed that way again if we don't say, okay, this is who we are. And by the way, the people saying this is who we are need to be plentiful and strong.
I agree.
And potent.
So, okay, this is, okay, I know this sounds like repetitive, me saying it over and over. It's true, and it's important to remember. This is another bit of classic fascist rhetoric. And I say fascist here as opposed to conservative because stuff like this goes beyond regular conservatism. This is like another tier past. But this is the idea that, so it refers to the idea that all ethnicities and races are fundamentally in conflict, and that in order to resist destruction by the non-white races, white people must be plentiful and strong. It frames racial dynamics as a purely combative thing, where it's not just like warfare you have to watch out for, but if you ever slip up and the white man ever grows weak, then we will die out as other cultures replace us. Note, of course, that Matt Walsh does not seem to care about the literal extermination of Native Americans, something that he supports, so this is not a principled defense of groups of people and their heritage. This is just purely a fear-mongering tactic for insecure white people who feel that their life is and way of living are under threat by the existence of other racial groups, which of course they are not. If there are any groups that deserve to feel as though their existence and way of life are being destroyed by another race, it is every race of people except for white people. So much of the JQ is just projecting actual global white supremacy onto another group of people. Like, oh man, I've got this crazy conspiracy for you. Did you know the Jews control global trade and also like use their power to like block out other nations and like, supplant the cultures with other nations? Really? Oh, really? They do that? Oh, that's so interesting. Like looking down at like the World Bank and the IMF, where openly in broad daylight, European organizations do that, but worse, everywhere, all the time. And then it's like, oh, well, of course. And then Matt Walsh would say to that, well, of course we get to do that. We're in charge. So again, it's all about power. It has nothing to do. It's projection and power. They fear other races, so they must, project that racially antagonistic outlook onto others. And it justifies their freakish obsession with the subject.
I just personally feel that you don't have to be an Anglo-Saxon to continue that line of thought. I just think people need to be more patriotic about the country in which they live.
That's a conservative. The person talking to Matt, this person right here, that is a classic conservative line, that you have to be pro-American, but America is a great melting pot. And as long as you enter America... So this is like a big thing with Reagan, too. Like, was Reagan racist? Yes. But conservative rhetoric for a long time in America has been about, the idea of assimilation. Sure, maybe there are racial issues or whatever, but fundamentally we just need to get together and be Americans. And that's like and that's like a common conservative talking point that's dying out right now. It's growing less common as people like Matt Walsh, fascists, open fascists, become more prominent and louder. These are basically 1900s era eugenicist arguments. Yeah. So what I'm about to read here is a little bit of American history that directly inspired the Nazis. The Nazis got their programs for racial segregation and racial superiority from American eugenicist groups. So, quote, Theodore Roosevelt raised the pitch of concern by proclaiming the great white middle class was committing, quote, race suicide by not producing enough children. The fear expressed by nativists that these degenerate racial stocks from Southern and Eastern Europe, again, remember that 120 years ago, the degenerate racial stocks came from Southern and Eastern Europe, not from Mexico, not from Africa, not from the Middle East, from Italy. But really, though, would pollute the Anglo-Saxon gene pool or soon outnumber the respectable middle class attracted a considerable audience. They used the Anglo-Saxon term back then, too, even though it was equally nonsensical. Guys, I'm really sorry if this is how you found out that Teddy Roosevelt was racist. The imperialist colonialist from 120 years ago, or 130, whatever. Yeah, Churchill was. Oh, yeah, Churchill believed basically the same thing. The only reason the Western eugenicist movement quieted down was because we fought the Nazis in the 40s, you know. Eugenicist sentiments were so common. Like, Churchill was openly eugenicist, talked about how the mass death of Indian people was fine because they bred like rabbits. It was really common in the West. But then the Nazis went and made it look bad. And that made it politically unpopular. Anyway, let's continue.
Know more about its heritage and where it came from and how it sprang about. I mean, like, like I married somebody that's, I don't think Maria's Anglo-Saxon, and she definitely has left her culture at the door. So, I mean, if Maria and I have
They made genocide political, exactly.
5 kids, like now I'm confused. Am I perpetuating the problem or
you see, you keep bringing this up and it makes me look like I'm making some racist point. I know you.
Matt Walsh is like reciting the 14 words, and his co-host is like, is it really that bad if I find like a, non-white wife and she loves America and I have children with her? And Matt's like, you're trying to make me sound racist. Well, let's see how he responds to this.
You say that's what you're trying to do, but that's obviously not what I'm saying. Have relations and kids with whoever you fall in love with. That's great, as long as they're the same gender. I'm fine with that. All I'm saying is that as a general rule, for our culture and our identity to continue, we need to just procreate and keep that culture going. Because you say, well, come over here and have.
Notice how he's talking about culture again now, even though he just sidestepped the question. His co-host was essentially saying, is my wife not of our culture, given that she loves America? And Matt Walsh's response is, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we have to protect our culture. But he's sidestepping the race question here because he doesn't want to, like, directly, challenge that point.
Some patriotism and identify with us. Why should they identify with us when we don't identify with us? When it's not even important enough to us to procreate and continue our culture, why should they give a damn about it? They don't. I don't blame them.
See, procreate and continue our culture. Culture equals race. That's it. Like, it's that simple. Culture equals race. And if you believe that culture equals race, and you're a white supremacist, which Matt Walsh is, that means you believe that white people are inherently culturally superior in a way that no social influence can change. He just 14 worded? Yeah, he did. That was the 14 words, literally.
What exact philosophy and values have we shown that are so important to us?
But I mean, I think the point is that if you're patriotic Americans that love the country, that have ingrained themselves in this country for several generations, need to start promoting more generations of people.
But it's easy to say these vague things like, well, promote and do this and that. But it's the reality. If we actually want to talk about how to solve the problem, it's real simple, but it involves us all actually doing something, which, like I said a million times now, is frankly just having kids and passing that down to your kids.
So again, notice how he can't answer the question directly. He said that race equals culture. His conservative co-host says, okay, so why not promote the culture? And then Matt Walsh essentially says, no, you can't promote a culture. You can only have more children. Because when Matt Walsh says promote the culture, he means make more white people. You understand? They're talking past each other because the conservative co-host doesn't understand. According to Matt Walsh, you can't make a Mexican American. There's no way to make a person of Mexican blood culturally American. Race is culture to Matt, which is why he keeps talking in these roundabout eufemisms. And then here's the final third of the clip. It's not very long.
If you don't do that, then you're not helping the problem. Sorry, you're not. You're not helping. I mean, we can all say how we'll just promote the values of this and that. But the way you promote values is to have children and pass it on to them. And if you don't do that, then it's just vague platitudes that mean nothing. I'm sorry. It's just what it is. And I'm no exemption from that. I mean, if I'm 40 and I haven't had a single kid, then I haven't helped. Everyone make their own. I'm just talking in general. The way in general that this country will reclaim itself, that's the way.
This country will reclaim itself. Palingenetic ultranationalism. He's a fascist to a T. He's like textbook. This country can reclaim itself by producing more of the white race and reclaiming our emasculated, withered heritage. It's the 14 words, and it is explicit and unambiguous. I think this audio was from a decade or more ago. I mean, he's been like this for a while. He actually believes this shit.
Or we can become extinct.
We can become extinct. America's population has only been increasing. We all know what he means when he says we. Also, of course, the population of the white race globally has only been going up as well. Just not as fast as he would like it to.
If that's the route we choose, then hey, it was a good run. Got a good 300 years out of it, almost. That's the way. Or we can become extinct. If that's the route we choose, then hey, it was a good run. Got a good 300 years out of it, almost.
So again, that seems strange, right? The white race has existed for significantly longer than 300 years. America's been around for roughly 300 years. But what he's actually saying, if you understand the wordplay here, is that America as a nation is the white man's experiment to create a new superpower based on our racial ideals. What he's saying is, if white people lose the battle for America by not having enough children, the experiment ends. An America controlled by non-white people, to him, is not America, because America is fundamentally white and existentially white. A non-white America is just land. It's just land and mountains and trees. It doesn't have the spiritual worth that America, in his mind, that's what he's saying, essentially. That it would be like the end of the experiment. Wait, it is actually Thousand-Year Reich shit? Yes! What he's talking about is birthing more whites to revitalize the nation so that America can reclaim its glory as an Anglo-Saxon superpower, oust the degenerates, which he says this openly, this isn't like even remotely subtle, oust the degenerates, promote American culture, that is a white ethno-state, and he's essentially describing the creation and maintenance of a Reich. Yeah, that's the idea. That was what a Reich was. It wasn't just like a mode of leadership. I mean, the whole point of the Third Reich, 1,000 years or whatever, was one based on racial supremacy. And that's what Matt Walsh believes. Is the low birth rate thing strictly a fascist Nazi talking point, or is it in the owning class's interest for there to be high birth rates? From a purely capitalistic standpoint, it really doesn't matter whether or not your country grows due to birth rates or due to immigration, but you do want an increase in people. We're not really dealing with overpopulation after all. That being said, when you're focusing on birth rates within a specific racial group, then that is pretty, like, clear Nazi shit, yeah. Well, that's cool. I guess, it's not as though we were at all undecided on the issue of whether or not Matt Walsh is a Nazi, but it's always good to re-examine our priors and make sure we, we're all fully confident in the position. He is dogmatically committed to it. Hey, if you're watching, you should like and subscribe. Liking helps promote the stream to other people who might want to watch it, which is everyone. Everyone wants to watch my content. As for subscribing, well, I just like it when that number goes up. So make sure to hit the subscribe button, or you're doing me dirty a little bit. You're kind of content stealing. I'll call the cops on you because you're stealing my content. You're stealing. Give me your subscription. That is the payment for watching. Even a little bit of watching. Even if you hate watching, you have to give it to me, or I'll call the police on you. I know your address. I know your address.